We're very, very excited to have you here, and we are fortunate to be kicking off our conference this morning with a session called Recruitment, Training, and Retention, or Retaining Tutors. And we have two programs represented that will be telling us the kinds of things that they have been doing. And we have Marie Nibby from the Literacy Network in Madison. And then we also have Cheryl Hernandez and Cassie Christensen from Kenosha Literacy. So welcome to our presenters today. We will be recording today's session. So if you have staff or volunteers or people who weren't able to sign in to this session, it will be up on our website. So we invite you to go there. The PowerPoint presentation will also be there in addition to what you are actually seeing today. I want to also remind you to, you're going to be muted. So if you have questions, I invite you to type those questions in the chat box. And if you're not certain where that is, you'll see a little orange arrow, maybe outside of, or maybe it has already closed. Down at the bottom of that is the chat box. And if you put your cursor where it says write your question here or right here, you'll be able to jot your question in. We have a staff person or two from Wisconsin Literacy who will be monitoring that chat, and we're going to save your questions until the end. So you can continue to add questions to the chat box as we move along. I do want to thank the Wisconsin Literacy staff who have been helpful in making this whole thing possible. Special thanks to Anna, who is running the controls today, and to Beth and Liz, who were very helpful in helping us put this together. Also out there behind the scenes are Shannon and our other Cassie. And we've got some help from that group with the chat box as well. So let me just check my notes to make sure we haven't missed anything. Nope, I think that's it. So we are ready to begin our program. And so I invite you to meet our presenters. And you can see we have the folks from Kenosha Literacy and the Literacy Network. Okay, let's move right on. So our first question today is, how do you recruit new tutors right now in this crazy pandemic that we're in? And have your tutor requirements changed to account for an increase in those virtual instructions? Okay, next slide, please. And let's begin with Marie.
Our main method for recruiting tutors is via our website. We have we have our tutor position description and application are on our website. It has always been an electronic application, so that isn't new for us. We use WordPress, and we previously used Google Forms. I'll take a quick look at our position description, show you a little bit about what we do there. We want all of our expectations to be as clear as possible up front. We want to recruit volunteers, but we don't want anyone to come on board if it's not a good fit for them. So as you scroll through the page on our website, it gives a little bit of overall information about volunteering. And if you scroll down, you find all of the different volunteer opportunities. You've got general information, and for our ESL tutoring or ABE tutoring, there's a description of exactly what's involved, the dates of the semester, and there's a spot there where you can apply. So if you're going to take a look at the application real quick. So after they've read what's involved, They can fill out an application here, just general information, and as they scroll down through the application, you can scroll a little bit through that, just general information. And we put the tutor training dates on there so they can look and see if that's going to work for them. And we're very clear up front about when the weekly sessions are, and that they, what our expectations are for attendance. And then as they scroll through, there's other details that we want them to be available to respond to emails regularly. That's how we mostly communicate with tutors, so we ask them about that up front. And then the last few questions on the application are open-ended about what have they volunteered before, have they volunteered in teaching positions before, and just what are they hoping for from this, what interests them about this position. So you can go back to the slide. We also use social media. Word of mouth is really significant as tutors tell other tutors about their experience. We connect back with tutors that have tutored with us previously and maybe needed to take a break for a while. We connect back up with them. And we post on local sites like United Way's volunteeryourtime.org website. And all of those other methods we use to point them to our website to read real specific things about the position and give them a chance to fill out an application there online if they're interested. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how some of our requirements have changed. Our basic expectations really remain the same. They still need to be at every session on time, stay the whole time. Those things haven't changed, even though we're doing things virtually now. What has changed is tutors need to have a laptop or a computer with video capacity and reliable internet, because everything's going to be virtual. They need to be comfortable using Zoom and features of Zoom like screen sharing and annotating. We will do training for them during the tutor training time, but we're realizing that it's a lot more difficult if people have no experience whatsoever with Zoom. We plan to add some checkboxes to our application to get a sense of the level of experience people are bringing with them, so we can figure out who can really hit the ground running. We provide help, but one-on-one coaching has been very time-consuming. Another new requirement is that we're asking all of our tutors to get a free Google Voice number for communicating with their learner if the internet goes out, or if they want to text a homework assignment. Previously, we asked our tutors to not exchange personal information. So now that we know they're going to need to communicate, we use Google Voice for privacy. And the last thing that we've changed is we created student and tutor communication guidelines to help with boundaries. You could open that real quick. We share this with tutors at tutor training and with students at their first lesson with their tutor. To be really clear, we found that now that people aren't physically showing up for sessions, we needed to provide some support for understanding one another's time and boundaries, being really upfront about that. So everybody's all on the same page with that. Tutors and students talk through this together at the first session. Both students and tutors are agreeing to the same communication guidelines. And go back to the slide, and I'll pass it to Kenosha.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So I'll just talk a little bit about how we are recruiting volunteers during COVID. What has always been and what still remains to be our biggest tool is social media. Facebook is something that we use very regularly, and we have a lot of people following our page, and it's probably the best way that we get the word out about new volunteer trainings coming up. Some of the other things that we do are the newspaper. So it's really kind of neat in Kenosha. The newspaper has a section for nonprofits to write articles, like opinion pieces, and they highlight different organizations each week, so we can reach new volunteers through that. We also use other organizations like United Way in Kenosha. So they have a website called Get Connected, and it can help potential volunteers filter through volunteering opportunities in the area and hopefully find us. And we also use an organization in Kenosha. It's called CAFASI. It's the Aging and Family Services organization, and they have a program called RSVP, which is for retired and senior volunteer people. And so they can go through that organization and find volunteer opportunities as well. Word of mouth, as Marie said, is a huge tool for us. You know, that is great for both volunteers and learners. One of the things that we have noticed, though, is that we aren't able to be in the community as much. We would often go to our community farmers market or events where, like, there's volunteer fairs, or speaking up at Rotary meetings, things like that. But we're not able to do that as much. One of the things that we've done to reach the community, though, is created yard signs. And you see that on the bottom corner, there's a picture of a business that's putting that up. And so we've asked our volunteers and our students to help us spread the word through the community by taking a yard sign, or if they know somebody that has a business, to put up a yard sign if they're comfortable with that. So it's kind of a way for us to reach the community. Hopefully everyone's going out for walks and things, and if they're not on the computer, they'll see us on the street. So next slide, I think.
All right, so talking about our requirements for tutors and tutor training. Again, not a lot has changed for us here in Kenosha. We've been doing a blended training that includes online portions of the training for quite some time. So our tutors, that has always been an expectation, that our tutors will have the ability to use that technology. They'll have access to email, and they'll be able to navigate online learning modules. So we provide some assistance if it's needed, but for the most part, if volunteers aren't able or willing to use that technology and get through those kind of basic online modules and things in the beginning, then we try to direct them to other ways that they can support our mission. So, you know, absolutely we need volunteers, but we also need volunteers that are capable and skilled to use the technology that we need to use, but also that our students need to know. So our students have to be able to access the internet and email and all those different kinds of technologies. And so we need our volunteers to be able to do those things as well. We offer tutor in-service opportunities a couple of times a year, and they often have technology-related sessions that, you know, are aimed at building our volunteers' confidence and their ability to use technology. And so especially this spring, when we were really full on Zoom, everything's happening all at once, we spent a lot of time, you know, with extra training sessions for the volunteers on how to use Zoom and the best way to do some of that virtual learning. Next slide.
So how do you screen and onboard new volunteers virtually? There we go, Cheryl.
Sure. All right. So again, not a lot has changed because we were already requiring that technology part of it. Definitely during that initial training process. So the way our tutor training is kind of broken up is we have an information meeting and then some training sessions following that, and some online modules that the volunteers complete in between the training sessions, and that initial information meeting. So that gives us time to learn about the volunteers and which have the technology skills that we need them to have. You know, some people come into that information meeting and they just say, I'm not doing all this online stuff. And we say, oh, well, this is the way we're going to do it, and we'll help you through it. But if they're not willing to, then it's just not going to work for them to be a volunteer, and that's okay. We'll find some other way for them to help us. Activities are designed to help us learn about the potential volunteer's personality and relevant skills. So the things that we're doing within our tutor training are intentional to help us get to learn about the volunteers through that process. We also have some observation and student teaching that's built into our tutor training process. And again, that allows us to begin to see how those volunteers are interacting with the students and with other volunteers. And we also start to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. And it helps us, begin to think about what kinds of learners we might match them with and things like that. And we can still do all those things in a virtual manner. So, it's a different way of thinking about it initially, but it's easy enough to do all those things on Zoom, just like we would in person. And then just communicating with our volunteers, one of the big changes, especially right away in the spring, was how do we get all this stuff to everyone? So we are mailing a lot more things than we've ever mailed before. We're doing lots of deliveries, driving around town, dropping off bags of materials for tutors. We also have them stop by and pick up the things as they need them. And so we've been able to work all of that out as well. Next slide.
When we are screening and onboarding new volunteers virtually, this is very similar to what we've been doing all along. We review the electronic applications and we screen them for requirements, red flags, questions. For example, can they come to the tutor training? Is their schedule consistent? Does our schedule fit for when we are having tutoring going on? Are they comfortable with Zoom? Are they comfortable with learning a little bit more about it if this is new territory for them? Do the motivations align with our mission? For example, if they have listed on their application that they really want to help children learn to read, well, our website makes it perfectly clear that we work only with adults. We want to understand that right up front. And do they need clarification about anything? They'll ask some questions there specifically about what's involved. We are willing to turn away potential tutors. For example, our GED tutors need to be comfortable with all of the subjects that the students need to work on for their GED. If we have a tutor that says they only want to tutor social studies, we point them to another volunteer opportunity or to other programs like United Way's website to try to find something that would be a better fit. After we've gone through their application and they're approved, we email them orientation materials, a volunteer manual that tells a little bit about our program, other things going on at Literacy Network and what's involved with being a volunteer with us. And we also include a tutor contract for them to look over and to submit that has them agree to the days and times and to confidentiality and to communicating with us regularly. And back to Kenosha.
So do you train new tutors with a virtual or a blended model? And can you talk a little bit about that process, please?
That's right, it's me. We do a completely virtual model at this point with training new tutors. The first part of our training is pre-training. We email a short PowerPoint training to the tutors that have signed up, that have filled out an application and been approved. The pre-training includes general information, stuff that's self-explanatory that we don't want to spend our training time on, start and end dates and contact information and just technical information about the GED, for example. In that, we also include details about expectations. We include some tasks for them to practice using Zoom and access a lesson plan so they can get familiar with those things and target some of their questions. And we also include some links to some short videos that we've made at Literacy Network to give them a little bit of background on using the virtual tools. I put a link in here to one of them. We won't watch the whole thing, but I wanted to show you quickly. We figured out a little bit about what was really giving people the most trouble and created some videos to address those things. This is one on whiteboard, using the whiteboard and annotating. My coworker, Becky, there has created amazing videos for us. In this particular one, she walks people around sharing the screen, annotating from both the tutor's perspective and from the student's perspective. We send a lot of these videos in the pre-training to give people some background before they come. And you go back to the slide. This is a place too where some people will self-select out after they've gone through more detail, they've looked at some of the videos, and they realize this is just not for them. They can go on a wait list for when we're back in person again, or we can refer them to another program. And then at the end of the pre-training, we have a quiz that's a Google form just to make sure that people understood what was there and also sort of see people's follow through for expectations. In the next slide, the second part of our training is what is normally face-to-face and now is face-to-face virtually using Zoom and Zoom breakout rooms. They're experiencing a little bit about what it's going to be like when they're tutoring. We start the training with a review of any questions they have from the pre-training. Usually targets a lot of the points that I wanted to make anyway, come up with the questions that they have. We go over tutoring strategies and tips, the content that we've always gone through. And we do hands-on practice using some sample lesson plans, accessing some links like New Readers Press News for You online. We use that a lot. We'll bring that into the training for people to have hands-on experience. And we also have them do some practice, partner practice using the Zoom features. So if if you want to click on that, this is an example of the activity that we do. We'll put them in breakout rooms one-on-one like they will be when they're tutoring, and they work through these tasks. If you scroll down a little bit, it takes them through steps of screen sharing and asking for help and who's in the room, muting and unmuting, all of those technical things. They'll go through this in their breakout room. When they hit snags, they can click to ask for help, and the person doing the training will come and answer questions. So as they work through this, they, again, develop the skills, but also some people will self-select and say, I don't think this is what I want to do. It's helpful for them right up front to know what's involved. Yeah, that's it.
Right. So at the Literacy Council, we've actually been using a blended online and in-person model for a while, like Cheryl mentioned before. And part of that, right, is that screening process. So like Marie said, you know, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. So volunteers would be completing the online modules, which are made up of materials that we create at the Literacy Council, but we also use a lot of resources that are already out there, right? So Pro Literacy has a lot of great online training modules. I know Wisconsin Literacy has things too. There's a lot of different resources out there, and so making sure that you're not, you know, recreating everything from scratch. You can use what's available already, and you can see how it's laid out on, there's a picture on the bottom if you can kind of see it. It's our web page, and it lays out the training by the topics they go through. And what's really, really beneficial about this online portion is that they can do it as time allows them to do it, right? So they don't have to sign up for a specific training day to complete these online things. We let them know, you know, it takes about 4 hours to complete, but they can log in and out of that as they have time to do so. We do start off our training with an information meeting. So Cheryl mentioned that earlier. And the information meeting is just something that allows volunteers to come in and learn about our organization, make sure that it's what they thought it was. So, you know, sometimes we do get people that come in and say, I want to help children learn to read. We can say right away, well, we work with adults, and then find the right organization for them to volunteer with if it doesn't fit their needs. It also allows for us to kind of learn about their personality, what their background is, without it being as formal. And if they do decide to continue with volunteering at the Literacy Council, they would then fill out a paper application at that information meeting, and we would get them signed up for these online modules. So they have to ask permission to do these. It's not something that just anybody in the community has access to. They have to email us and we give them permission to continue with that training, so that we don't have people doing it randomly and then saying, well, I'm done with the training, I'm ready to be a volunteer now. We want to make sure that the people who have access to it are the people who we've met and are ready to go through with the training. So we can do our information meeting, and we can also do our follow-up of these modules. So we do a discussion session in person, usually to discuss what they've learned online, right? So we have some activities that go along with it where we can kind of learn a little bit more about their personality. It gives them opportunity to ask questions about the information that was included in those online modules. So those 2 sessions, the information meeting and the online follow-up meeting, can both be done on Zoom. So we've had success with that. And that also lets us know whether or not they're able to use Zoom, because that is what we use with our learners as well. And so it gives them a little bit of experience using Zoom with us. We do our curriculum workshop. The 3rd and final piece of our training is learning how to use our curriculum. We do that in person because it is so hands-on, but we make sure that our space is set up so that it's as safe as possible for those volunteers. You know, and if they're not comfortable with that, then we can have them continue the training in a different way. But we do need to be able to have them use those materials hands-on first.
Yeah, I think it's important to know, just because different programs are doing different things programming wise. In the spring, we were doing all of our programs virtually, but since July, we have both options. So we have in-person programs, tutoring and classes in person as well as virtually. So we need tutors and volunteers that are comfortable with doing both of those things as well. And so that's part of the process.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl. And so that kind of leads into that last bullet point where the volunteers can complete their observation hours. Right? So they have to observe at least 4 to 6 hours before they can work with a student independently. So they can choose to do those in person or virtually. From our experience, a lot of the volunteers have chosen to do it in person, but there's always that option for them to do it virtually. Volunteers work within our drop-in tutoring program as the first volunteering experience. And this is really important for us. It gives us an opportunity to learn about the volunteer a little bit more. So our drop-in volunteering program is where they're working with different learners. depending on the day that they come in, right? So they might be working with a level 1 learner on one day and then a level 3 learner on another day. And they might be working with different types of learners. Maybe it's an ABE student, maybe it's an ELL student. And we find that, you know, people might come in with an idea of what they want to do, they have an idea of what they want to do, but then as they experience working with different learners, they maybe like working with different types of learners than they originally thought, or they really like the idea of switching up the students that they're working with. So it gives us an opportunity to learn about them, but it's also an opportunity for them to gain experience with the materials before, you know, we would just place them with one student. And most of our volunteers remain in that drop-in tutoring program. So that's the largest part of our program, rather than a one-on-one situation.
Wonderful. So how do you supervise and support tutors when they're working virtually? And then how do you collect data or ensure that quality of instruction or make sure that tutors feeling really engaged and supported? So I think we're going to start with Kenosha again. Yes, tell us about that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the drop-in tutoring program is our larger program. And so what we've done with virtual tutoring is we've set specific times that aligned with our program hours before, so that all of our students and volunteers are coming at the same time on Zoom. And so we're doing this because we know that we can create that sense of community or continue creating that sense of community with our volunteers virtually, even though we're not seeing them in person. And it was really exciting for everybody back in the spring when they signed in and they hadn't seen anybody for a week, and they got onto Zoom.
Little squares popped up.
Yeah, little squares, and they were really excited. So it definitely does that. It gives them an opportunity to see each other. That's a huge part of why they continue to work with us at the Literacy Councils, because they've built those relationships with not just their students, but with other volunteers. Having those set tutoring times on Zoom allows us to communicate program updates. So, you know, if we are transitioning back into in-person or there's a new program coming up at the Literacy Council, that gives us that opportunity to communicate with everybody in person. We obviously do emails and newsletters and things like that, but when they can ask questions, that's the best way to get the information out. Reporting hours and progress. So in the past, we had individualized lesson plans for all of the students that volunteers would tell us what they've completed and staff would update those lesson plans for students. What we've done in place of that is part of our curbside pickup is all of our volunteers have a printed off hours log so they can keep track of the progress that they have with each student, and then they can choose how to send that back into us. So they can mail it, they can drop it off, they can send a picture in an email, you know, whatever's the best way for them to do it. And then what the Zoom classes allow us to do is to have students and volunteers break out. So we're all together in one session, but break out into breakout rooms. And we can pop in and out of those breakout rooms. So if they're struggling with something, maybe a student loses connection, right? Either Cheryl or I are right there. They have access to us to be able to help. We can pop in and see how the session is going. You know, and again, we can kind of monitor how students and volunteers are working together. And then finally, we do tutor survey. So right in the beginning, the very first thing we did is we needed to know when volunteers were available. So we created a Google Forms survey. It was really easy for the volunteers to complete and send, you know, we had the results right away. So we were able to figure out their availability, whether they wanted to do in-person or virtual. And then also if they had any concerns or ideas that they wanted to share with us. And surveys are something that we do pretty often at the Literacy Council, so this wasn't anything new or out of the box for volunteers.
All right, I'll go through this kind of quick because I know we're getting short on time. So again, we talked about how we do in-services, and those really give us an opportunity to not only share new information with volunteers and help them learn new skills, but it's a way for them to connect with each other. And so I think one of the things that we really try to focus on here at the Literacy Council is building community amongst our students and our volunteers. And we know that that is an important part of keeping people active and motivated and participating in the program. So we focus a lot on different ways to build community amongst our participants. Communication is really important, so lots of emails with program updates, so people feel like they are part of the process and they know what's going on and they have all the information, right? People like to know that. Definitely phone calls to volunteers that haven't responded through email, and communicating through social media and things like that, whatever is the best way to track people down. And then we also have spent some time sending thank you cards and notes and things in the mail, especially in the beginning when there was a lot of change and a lot of transition. Just a little extra kind of thank you, and we're thinking of you, and we hope you're doing well. Just during that time when we were all a little more stressed. Before COVID, we would have these monthly tutor lunch bunches, and so once a month we would meet with our tutors at a local restaurant, and we'd have lunch, and people could chat and talk, and we'd give updates about the Literacy Council and things. Since COVID, we obviously haven't been doing that, but we have started over the summer coffee breaks. So we just meet in a local park, and people can socially distance, and we wear masks and all that. But the tutors can still come and have coffee and visit with each other, and that's been a really important experience for them, something that they really look forward to, seeing each other and being able to talk. So again, that social giving opportunities for that social interaction is really important for our volunteers to keep them motivated. Next slide.
Okay, Marie.
One of the things that we do for supporting the tutors, we've spent some time doing one-on-one extra Zoom practice as needed, because this is such a crucial part of what our tutors are doing right now. I've spent time meeting one-on-one with tutors. Sometimes our session leaders will do that, and also partnering up experienced tutors with tutors who are new to Zoom, to help one another as well. What we do each week is email a tutor a prepared lesson plan, because they're matched with one student. They're going to continue to meet with that student weekly through the semester. So we email them a lesson plan. It includes links to sites we might want them to go to, for example, News for You online. We have mailed every student a book. So if the lesson plan includes going through some pages in that workbook, we're using the Journey to Success series. We will include scans of that day's workbook page in the lesson plan that we send to the tutor. So they've got information the day before. They can go through and take a look at what they're going to be working on. There's multiple activities on that lesson plan, so if one isn't going very well, they can move on to the next one. When everyone arrives in the main Zoom room at their tutoring session, the session leaders place them in their individual breakout rooms, and then that session leader is there for the entire time. So if anybody has difficulty, like Cassie was saying, if they indicate they need help, the session leader can pop in and answer those questions. And if they are not troubleshooting, they can just pop into the different breakout rooms and check in, see how people are doing, see what they're working on. So we try to stay really close to them through the tutoring time. And then at the end of the session, we ask all of the tutors to complete a tutor feedback form. And if you want to open that real quick, they're required to do this at the end of the session before they leave, not like, oh, I'll get to it later today. Want to do that right at the end of the session. Just a lot of general information, the date and the time. We ask them how long they met that day. And also if the students spent time working outside of class, we're interested in knowing how much time they have to be working on stuff. We will ask them, were they using the video format, or did internet go out and they spent some time working together on the phone? And then if you scroll down a little bit, we always ask them if they've used any of the skills they were working on in class during the week, because we want to see how this is impacting them and also help them to see some of the growth that they're making. And then at the end of the form, how did today's tutoring go? What did you work on? Did you assign homework? And if they have any questions or concerns, our session leaders read this within 24 hours to make sure that if there are any questions or concerns, or if a tutor has an idea of something they'd like to work on next time, they can incorporate that information in the lesson plan for the next week. So the tutor feedback form is really crucial to us. And then you can go back to the slide. The session leaders enter attendance hours on a weekly roster in the shared Google Drive folder. So we are able to keep track of attendance hours. I monitor the rosters as well as our staff as we're trying to keep track of data for reporting purposes. And
Okay, so what do you recommend to agencies that are developing a plan to onboard, train, and support volunteers virtually?
I think that our strongest recommendation is that there be lots of communication, always significant when working with volunteers, but we're finding that we have to be really, really intentional now virtually because communication is so crucial. We want to be very clear with expectations in our application and training process so people really understand the process now that everything is virtual and is a little bit different than what we've done before. I think I would stress that things will not always go smoothly at first, and that's okay. Our first few sessions with new tutors and new learners are sometimes a little rocky, and that's just okay. We try to let them know that that's fine. We'll move past it and keep moving forward. Like Cassie was saying, we try to provide a lot of resources, videos, links, online training. Now that they're doing things online in their sessions and outside of their sessions, there's tons of resources. We want to make sure those are available to everybody. Our training includes hands-on practice in breakout rooms. Our face-to-face training always has included a lot of hands-on practice, and we feel that virtually that's still important. Hands-on practice is always going to be important in training our tutors. And like I said before, we have to be willing to refer potential tutors to something that's a better fit for them. That's okay to do. Our tutors who have a little bit of Zoom experience, but they still need to build up those skills. You might want to consider partnering experienced tutors with tutors who are new to Zoom. And also how best to prepare students as well. We try to spend a little time with students before their first session, making sure they were able to download Zoom and mute and unmute. That has made things a lot easier for tutors if students are a little bit more prepared as well. And lastly, to enjoy the challenge. It's something that people have come into a little bit intimidated, but people have been surprised to find that they've really enjoyed the challenge. They feel very accomplished. Both the learners and the tutors find it really empowering to know how to use this technology that everybody needs to use right now. So you can enjoy the challenge and have a lot of fun with it.
All right, so I'll just again go through this real quickly because I'm sure there are questions and we want to make sure we leave time for that. So I think our recommendations are try not to focus on the what if scenarios. I know it's really easy to say, but we can't do this because of this, and what about this, and this person's not going to want to do this. There's all these details that feel like, you know, maybe they're not going to fall into place, but sometimes you just have to jump into something new and try it and see what works and what doesn't work. And I think as long as you have good communication with the volunteers and you're trying to support them, they're going to understand, you know, those changes better. And so, you know, this was a quick transition for all of us in the spring. We transitioned to never having done any virtual classes at all to all of our classes being virtual within a week. So sometimes you just have to dive in and make it work. And I think, you know, I've heard Marie say this, and we've said it too, just know that this isn't going to be the right volunteer experience for everyone, and that's okay. I think especially now that we have this added virtual component, not everyone loves it. And maybe they're going to want to wait until we have more in-person opportunities or whatever. It's okay to say, you know, being a tutor isn't going to be the best way for you to volunteer for us, but there are other ways you can support the Literacy Council. And then I think Cassie's going to share a little bit too.
Yeah, I would just say having the opportunity to have a virtual group space. So I think like Marie and we were saying was that we have that one meeting time on Zoom, and being able to offer that one meeting time takes the pressure off of volunteers to create a Zoom account, communicate with their learners every day, right? They can communicate with you. And then also that you're there to support them if there are any issues. And also just having that virtual group space really creates that community and keeps people involved and tied to your organization. So we feel like it was the best way for us to go about it, rather than having everybody set up their own Zoom things and meeting at a bunch of random times. We weren't able to communicate with them as regularly. So.
Wonderful. Next slide, please. Well, so we appreciate everybody being here, and we do have a few minutes left for questions. So I would invite whoever's monitoring our chat to share some questions with our panel so they can answer the burning questions that our audience has had. Do we have questions? I'm not hearing any, and I can't see them.
This is Anna. I can read some. I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks, Anna.
I may have a person muted here. Hang on.
Oh, that could be.
Let me unmute. I don't know if there was someone else. So I know Robin asked about private, or if you give Zoom accounts for your tutors, or are they required to obtain their own?
So we have, probably similar to Literacy Network, right? We have our organization's Zoom account, and so all of the tutoring and programming is done through that. So we would create the meeting, we would create the link, and then we share it with everyone. So for example, our tutoring session is, might be on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Everybody that participates in that tutoring session is going to get that link, and then they come and we put them into breakout rooms. So the tutor and student will work together in a breakout room. So we do that as opposed to everyone create their own account with setting their own meetings and everything.
Great. And then Lily had some questions as well about how you're training your volunteers to use distant tools, and then also who manages your social media.
So for us, for using tools, the resources using Zoom, we approached it a little bit differently. We have in-services for our volunteers, and so twice a year we have a different topic. It just so happened that the fall one, or the spring one, the timing, we used it to train our volunteers on Zoom. Yep, the training was on Zoom, and we did a lot of the similar things that Marie was talking about, where they did partner practice. We walked them through how to use all the features on Zoom. And then, of course, with our training being on Zoom right now, they would have experience using those things just throughout the training.
Marie, anything you want to add to that?
We found that the hands-on practice with Zoom and the Zoom features like screen sharing and using the whiteboard, practicing those hands-on during our virtual tutor training, as well as some one-on-one coaching as needed, was the best way to make people be familiar with that. And as to our social media, we have development staff at University Network, and they manage the social media. They keep updates on things that are going on, student achievements, and other things that we're sharing with the public, and they're the ones that manage that for us.
Okay.
And then Angel had a question. She wrote in the chat box about, sorry, I just lost it. Oh, if the handouts were going to be available. And then I've also unmuted you if you want to, if you had any other questions.
Okay, now handouts, I'm not quite sure what you mean by handouts, but the video will be out there and the PowerPoint where you'll be able to click on most of the links. We're going to disable a couple of them, but you'll be able to click on some of the links to see what's out there. So I hope that helps answer your question. And anything else?
Yes. Deb asks Marie if it's possible to access your online tutor application screening questions.
Our application is on our website. On our homepage is a place to click on volunteer, and after they go through a description of what's involved in tutoring, there's a button to click on the application, and that is that's on our website to complete.
Okay. All right. And
You can also
Deb.
scroll through it to see it and just not submit it if you're interested in the kinds of questions that are there.
Yeah, so the key is don't submit it if you
You
really
want
don't
to volunteer
want
with us.
to. Right. Yeah, Deb's got her hands full. Okay, Anna, are there other questions?
I do not see other.
Okay, I have one. How are you testing students? Because I know each of you does some either TABE or Take Class E or whatever. How are you doing that? Are you doing it in person? And how does that work? So Marie, how about you guys?
For our ESL population, they did it online virtually as we took in just this past semester some new students coming in. Other testing that's particularly important is pre-testing and practice testing for our GED students. So they'll do unofficial practice tests on Learning Express Library online. They make a free account there and they can do some practice tests. And we help them take practice tests online using the GED Ready and some support we get from Wisconsin Literacy to do that.
Wonderful. How about Kenosha? What are you doing?
Yeah, so because we are doing some in-person programming, we've been able to kind of schedule things to do most of that in person, making appointments and things like that. But in the beginning, we were doing some things virtually as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I want you to note that their email addresses are here on this slide, and they're more than welcoming for you to drop them an email with any questions you have or links to anything that you would like to see. And could we have that last slide, please? So I want to thank all of our presenters. Thank you, all three of you. You did a great job. Yes, and it was very informative. I think we all picked up some neat things. And a little commercial, I also want to remind you to join us on Zoom for our Wisconsin Literacy Annual Meeting at noon today. So hopefully you'll have your sub sandwiches and you'll be enjoying your lunch while we're having our annual meeting. And of course, the rest of the sessions are being offered throughout the day today. So once again, thank you to all of you, and thanks to all of you who've joined us this morning. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.